just some of your own experiences and advice for nutrition for 70.3, and then maybe how it varies between 70.3 and Ironman.
Oh, again, as with the taper, nutrition is a very individual thing, and you need to work out what actually fits you and what works for you and your lifestyle. I've been really lucky throughout my career in that I call myself Iron Guts, so I can eat everything. I don't usually have a problem with any foods, but in saying that, I eat well. I cook most of my food at home, and I like good food. I don't like fatty fried food, so you don't see me eating at McDonald's or KFC or any of those horrible, fast food places. I like fresh, home-cooked meals. And I think it's important that you have a really good balance. And it's not something that you just think about leading into a race. It should be part of your daily routine. It should be as important as your training. So it needs to be done from the start, not, okay, 2 weeks out from a race, I better start eating well now. It needs to be something that's incorporated from the time you start your training program till when you decide to have off-season. And I think with nutrition, so many people are scared of carbohydrates these days, and it kills me. There's nothing wrong with carbohydrates. They're good for you. The biggest problem triathletes have is just, and the reason they say, oh, I can't eat carbohydrates, they make me fat. It's not carbohydrates making you fat. It's because triathletes eat too much. That's the biggest problem. So from what I've seen, we just eat too much and at the wrong time. My greatest motto that I like to use is eat to train, don't train to eat. So don't go out and do your big 5-hour bike ride and think, sweet, I've just ridden 5 hours, I can eat huge amounts of food. You should be eating to train. So you should be eating things throughout that 5-hour session that's going to make you train as efficiently and as well as you can. And not, okay, I'm not going to eat for this 5-hour ride. That means when I get home I can just, fill my face. And that's what I see more triathletes doing. You need to eat smart, you need to eat well, and smaller amounts and throughout the day. So not this massive big meal of, people say, oh, but pasta, it's so bad for me. And then I see the bowl of pasta they have at night, and I'm like, no, it's the amount you're eating that's bad for you, not the actual pasta or not the rice or not the bread. Don't be scared of these things. You are training hard. You are allowed to eat these things, but it's just the quantity and the amount. Biggest mistake I see triathletes make as well is they don't get enough electrolyte. It's the biggest mistake, particularly when you're doing races in hot areas. I think it's crucial that all athletes get sweat tests done. It's a simple test, doesn't cost a fortune, and every individual's different. You don't have to, just because you're a big person doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a faster sweat rate than a small person. I know plenty of tiny athletes out there where their sweat rate's off the Richter scale. And then it doesn't matter how efficient you are, if you're not getting enough electrolyte in during a race or during training, you're not going to recover. So I think being really careful with your sweat rate, finding out what it is, and then making sure that every time you train, you stick to the formula.
Some electrolyte examples.
So electrolyte examples, it's funny, we talk about this race here in Phuket, and it's one of the hottest races you can do. Same as when you race in the Philippines. Basically, any time you race in East Asia, you are going to be racing in really, really extreme conditions. And the amount of people I see starting with water on their bike, it's insane. Because you're basically behind the 8 ball from the time you get halfway through the swim. So crucial you start with 2 biddens on your bike, and both need to be with electrolyte. One can be slightly stronger than the other, but you do not have water at all. The only time you really need to have water is out on the aid stations, pouring it over your head, a little bit in the mouth just to get rid of that sweet taste if you don't like the electrolyte so much. But you are going to be behind the 8 ball from the start. So salt tablets, electrolyte, any electrolyte that you can find that's, try not to get any electrolyte that's too high in sugar, because that's when you can start getting stomach issues. Especially in extreme conditions here where your stomach starts to shut down, you don't have a lot of blood going through the stomach. If you're drinking electrolytes that are really high in sugar content, that's when you'll see these people say, oh, but I couldn't take anything in, I was so crook. It's usually because the sugar content's super high. And also if you're not training on it and all of a sudden you're shoving down all this electrolyte on race day, of course your stomach's going to shut down because it's not used to it. So you need to start training electrolytes well in advance of race day. But I use Shots Nutrition because it's not that high in sugar. I'm not sponsored by Shots. I like it. It works for me. But I know others that use Endura. There's an array of different types of electrolytes out there, and they're all good. But just try and stick clear of the ones that are really, really high in sugar.